Howdy folks, welcome to Lorcana Wednesday here at Rudrose Entertainment. What are your top 10 favorite things about Lorcana? If you missed last week's top 10 worst things about the game, click right here or the link in the description. And without further ado, in no particular order, here are my top 10 favorite things about Lorcana currently. Number 10, the simplicity of the game and there's no counterplay. I really thought I would dislike this aspect of Lorcana when I first heard about it and when I was first discovering it and playing it at Gen Con. I thought, wow, that's way too simple. I come from the Final Fantasy TCG and Magic where there's all this interaction and the stack and all these things. But honestly, I think that's exactly why I do enjoy it, is that compared to those other games, I like that it's simple. I like that during my opponent's turn, I can essentially zone out. I don't have to respond to what they're saying. Hold on, in response to that, okay, before you go to combat, all right, before your turn ends, I don't even have to nod and agree with what they say. I'll hear some players say that, okay, yes. It's like, no, I don't have to say a word because I can't do anything about what they're doing. Yes, on the rare occasion, this does feel a little frustrating, but for the most part, I appreciate the simplicity of the game. It lets my girlfriend get more into it. She appreciates the simplicity of it. I have those other games when I want something more complicated, but Lorcana has been a very, very welcome surprise for something that just says, hey, I don't have to overly think about it. I can just go in, do my turn, sit there, and then watch my opponent play. And the fact that there's no counterplay, again, means I get to do my turn. I get to do the things I want to do, and no one goes, here's a counterspell. You didn't know that was going to stop you. Number 9, challenging versus questing for lore. This fits in with the simple gameplay as there's no blocking in this game. Since there's no combat phase, and since you can't do anything on opponent's turn, you don't get to decide, okay, I want this character to block, It's all about challenging versus questing for lore. You exert your characters to quest for lore, which also opens them up to a challenge. And then your own characters, you get to decide, do I want to challenge my opponent's characters, attempt to slow them down, or do I want to make my own decision to quest for lore, which helps me win the game. It's a pretty fun dynamic, and it really does give you a lot of decisions throughout the game. Number 8, the Disney characters themselves. Yes, I did complain in the last video about a lack of theme overall for the game, and that I don't necessarily feel like I have to have the Beast on the field or Gaston to do this thing. I do think they could be anything. That being said, it's still nice to play a game with Disney characters that I've grown up with, that I love. I grew up from the Disney Renaissance era, as did my girlfriend and many of my other friends, so it is enjoyable to see these characters in a TCG and to get them on the field. Even if they don't quite live up to what I would like them to be theme-wise, it's still nice to see the characters. Number 7, the color freedom. The only restriction in this game as far as your deck building goes is that you must use only 2 ink colors. Technically, I think you can use 1 ink color, though there's currently not really much of a reason to do that. But that's it. You just can't exceed 2 colors of ink, but there are no cards that require a certain type of ink. Unlike in Magic, where you'll have, let's say, a card that is 1 colorless and then 1 fire, and if you're playing a deck with multiple colors and you don't have that fire, you can't cast that card. Whereas in Lorcana, it says, nope, it doesn't matter. If you have 3 ink in your Inkwell, you can cast any card that is 3 ink or less. You don't specifically need amber ink for the amber cards and sapphire ink for the sapphire cards. You can just tap for anything. And again, yes, I can see the argument maybe that is restrictive in some way, but having played it a lot, I really appreciate that simplicity. I appreciate that there isn't, I have this 4-cost card, but I don't have the right type of ink to play it. Hey, it's turn 4, I've got that much ink, I can play it. Number 6 is the deck size. Now, this is not really anything new, depending on the card game you have played. Magic the Gathering has a minimum of 60 card deck, but then you can extend it to however much you want above that. And Lorcana follows a similar pattern. Minimum, you must have 60 cards, but you can put as many as you want in there. But I most recently come from the Final Fantasy trading card game, and in that game, it is a hard 50. No more, no less. And so I do appreciate that in this game, I can build my deck beyond that. 1, it prevents deck out, which is rather rare. 2, there's some decks that have such good drawing power that I'm more than willing to put extra cards in there and happily have 65, 67, 70, 61, whatever you want. I always appreciate that kind of flexibility. Number 5, the art on the cards. The art for Lorcana overall is quite good, especially the enchanted rares. I have to give a shout out to these. They could have absolutely just reprinted the same card and, it's got a bit of a fancy border, or maybe it doesn't have a border. But no, they went all out and gave all of the enchanted rares different artwork entirely for the same card. that increases their value only further, in my opinion. And some of these, Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, for example, are just stunning. They absolutely knocked it out of the park at this card. I love that the original version is her towering over the ship, looking down at it in the water, and in the enchanted rare version, she picked it up entirely. Same with Sisu, holding the orb there, just looks gorgeous, versus the normal card where she's flying up towards you. Some of them are a little, I don't know if cheap is the right word, but samey, I guess. If you look at Aladdin Heroic Outlaw, he's just kind of on top of a building. Yeah, he's hanging on the side of it. I don't know. That one reminds me a bit too much like the base card, as does something like Maui's Hero to All version. But nonetheless, they are technically different artworks, and that is appreciated. Now, not all the art in the game is amazing. I always think of Donald Duck Boisterous Fowl number 108 from the first chapter. It's just a picture of Donald Duck against this generic red cliff background. Nothing about it. I don't even know where he's at, what location he is. He isn't interacting with anyone. So art like that is a bit wasteful and feels a bit undercooked. But with things like Pooh the Honey Wizard, unfortunately, art wasn't used on a better card, but the art itself is very good. And overall, I am pleased with it for the game. Number 4, the inking mechanic. Having gone to several Friday Night Magics, I can say the land system, while comforting and old-timey in a way, is just very archaic. And if anyone has played Magic, you know there are games where you can get flooded, or you don't get any lands at all, and you just can't even play the game. And that feels awful, to have several of your games just ended before they even began, completely out of your control. However, with the inking mechanic, for the most part, you are almost always going to at least get to play a game of Lorcana. Yes, with cards that are uninkable, you will still get those rare occasions where you just get nothing but uninkable cards in your hand, and you do actually get stuck on 2 ink in your Inkwell, or 1 ink, or 3 ink. But that rarely happens, and my playtime with Lorcana has felt insanely less frustrating than it has with Magic. For the most part, the ink is a very nice mechanic, similar to Final Fantasy TCG's discard mechanic, where you have to get rid of cards. The cards in your Inkwell are gone for the rest of the game, so you have to kind of choose what you are and aren't willing to give up. I find Lorcana's inking mechanic much less frustrating than lands in Magic the Gathering. Number 3, the 3-tier card design. And what I mean by that is there are 3 numbers that they can use to influence all of the character cards in the game. This is the cost of the card, the stats of the card, which is where most card games were in, but then you also have the lore counter. You can create interesting cards like Pinocchio's Star Attraction, a 2-cost uninkable with 1 attack and 1 health, which normally would be absolutely terrible, but because he can quest for 3 lore, he's absolutely worth it, especially in aggressive builds. Or you can even slap something like Pooh the Honey Wizard. 5 costs 5, 4, 5, quests for 2. I like that with 3 levels of design, you can make cards that cost a lot, but also quest for a lot. Or perhaps they're very cheap, but their stats are terrible. The only downside to this, of course, is that as more cards get printed, there will always be the best version of a 5-cost or the best version of a 3-cost in those colors, especially on these cards that are blank and do not have any other text. If there's nothing else to sway you to play them, you're always just going to play whatever the best numerical value of those are. However, with 3 different numbers to work with, it does give the designers a lot of room to play around with. And as a player, I enjoy when I get to make those decisions in my deck building that, well, this guy is a terrible attacker, but you know what? He's going to quest, and that's what wins me the game. Or a card like Maui Hero to All. Can't quest to save his life, but he's a great beater, and that's what I need him in there for. Number 2 is the shift mechanic. This was a mechanic that at times I do find a bit frustrating, especially when it's insanely powerful, looking at you, the queen, commanding presence, as a 5-cost can be shifted on for only 2, which if you combine it with her 1-cost base version means you can still play the base version, then shift this for a net +2 gain overall as opposed to paying outright 5 for her. Nonetheless, the mechanic is interesting, and I think it hits the mark much better than Sing does. What makes shift work is that it's tied to certain characters. So the evil queen cannot turn into Pinocchio, or another Pinocchio cannot suddenly turn into an Aladdin. Shift is tied to specific characters, so you do need to see that combination of characters to get them. And while the balance isn't fully there, again, the queen is probably too strong, while cards like Hades, King of Olympus are still very overcosted, even with a Shift 6. It's nonetheless a unique and interesting mechanic that is the closest thing the game currently has to building towards a theme or a type or a set of characters from a film. And number 1 is the Mulligan. The Mulligan is the best / fairest mulligan I've experienced in any card game. There is no penalty to it whatsoever. You get to 100% pick and choose the cards you wish to keep as well as which to send back. This is a great way to cultivate your starting hand. Other games like Final Fantasy require an entire hand mulligan, so you might lose a few things you would prefer to keep, whereas games like Magic actually punish you for mulliganing, which is ridiculous because you can't even play that game without the proper amount of lands. The mulligan in Disney Lorcana is so fair and so welcoming and so forgiving that it's hard to go back to any other game as far as a mulligan is concerned based on this one. I absolutely love it. It's one of the best things about the game, and I hope other games follow it as well because it mitigates a lot of the frustration that comes with so many other card games where, for the most part, you can ensure that your starting hand is at least about as usable as you're able to. Yes, it's not perfect. Nothing ever will be unless you're absolutely allowed to dig through your deck and pick your perfect opening 7, but that also would break a lot of games. This mulligan feature is great. I absolutely adore it. It's one of my favorite things about Disney Lorcana. And those are my top 10 things for Disney Lorcana that I really enjoy about it right now. Heading into 2024, what are some of the things you love about the game that maybe I didn't mention or that you agree with on this list? Let me know in the comments below. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button for more Lorcana videos every Wednesday. I'm so close to 1,000 subs, and your help in reaching that goal is greatly appreciated. Until next time, take care.